Story 1. A Lesser Demon. A Horror Story. This happened when I was a child, and even after all these years, I still have nightmares about it. My family rarely speaks of that night. Fear silences us before we ever finish the story. It was the last day of summer vacation at my grandmother's house in Catemaco, a place known for its witches. My mom and sister always hated going there. That afternoon, my older brother Juan and I were playing in the empty lot behind the house, digging tunnels for our toy cars. While scooping out dirt, my hand hit something hard. It was buried deep, so Juan got a shovel. After some digging, we uncovered a white, round object. A skull. Before we could react, my grandmother appeared. Without a word, she grabbed it, wrapped it in her apron, and hurried inside. We were kids. We didn't understand what we had found. We kept playing, but the sky darkened unnaturally. Thick black clouds rolled in, and strange red lightning flickered across the sky. Silent. Unnatural. That night, the storm never came, but something else did. During dinner, no one spoke of the skull. The air felt heavy. Suddenly, a deafening thunderclap shook the house. Light flooded the backyard where we had been playing. My grandmother dismissed it as a nearby lightning strike, but Juan and I exchanged fearful glances. Then, the power went out. The only light came from the altar in the corner, where my grandmother kept her saints. We huddled close as a sudden gust of wind blasted through the room, knocking over religious figurines. A framed picture of Pope John Paul II crashed to the floor, glass shattering. My grandmother calmly lit candles. My mother looked tense but said nothing. We had no choice but to sleep. I lay awake, haunted by the image of that skull. Then, I had a nightmare. I saw the skull staring at me, growing larger and larger. I ran, but it chased me through the darkness. Just as I tripped and fell, I woke up. Drenched in sweat, I got up to use the bathroom. Groggy, I didn't notice my mother and grandmother bracing their weight against the door. I didn't see my sister and Juan huddled under the table, crying. I walked right past them. That's when I heard it. Something was trying to break in, slamming, clawing, kicking at the wood. My mother and grandmother fought to keep the door shut. I stayed frozen, trying to process what I was hearing. My grandmother shouted, "Pull the brazier over here!" I obeyed, dragging it toward her. She threw a cote wood onto the coals and poured a thick greenish liquid over it. A bitter white smoke filled the air. She began reciting Hail Marys, voice firm. The pounding stopped. Then, a heavy thud on the metal roof. Something had landed. We held our breath as it moved, slow, deliberate. The roof creaked under its weight. Silence. Then, long, sharp claws scraping against the metal. A shrill, agonizing sound. My mother spread her arms wide and prayed louder. Then, nothing. The wind stopped. The sky cleared. The power returned. She opened the door, letting the smoke escape. My mother protested, but my grandmother ignored her. She added basil and rosemary to the brazier and made us all drink it, saying it was for the shock. We sat in silence. Hours later, my mother whispered, "It's over now." My grandmother took a deep breath. "It was just a lesser demon," she said. A chill ran down my spine. "It came to reclaim its remains." I didn't sleep at all. The next morning, we left. It would be years before my mother allowed us to return. Story 2. The Demon Payman. For as long as I can remember, I had lived in a house in the heart of the city, a place shared with my coworkers, a central hub where stories and adventures unfolded daily. I'd visit my parents once a month, just a stone's throw away, yet the desire to live on my own had been growing, fueled by personal reasons I couldn't ignore. The city pulsed with life, and so did I. By day, I worked at a prestigious magazine publishing house, where fate led me to cross paths with Chui. What started as a simple connection soon ignited into something deeper, something unforgettable. In time, we decided to take the leap, moving in together, starting a new chapter. First, he joined me in the house I shared with my roommates. But we were destined for more, and before long, we took the plunge and rented an apartment of our own. With shared dreams and expenses, we faced the future head-on, ready to conquer it together. We began the new year living together, and everything seemed fine. I was adjusting to my new life, and while I had never planned on having children, I found myself pregnant. Chui was on the same page as me about not wanting kids, but as we came to terms with the pregnancy, we both agreed to go ahead with it. The pregnancy went smoothly, and when the time came, our son Abel was born without complications. In the early months, the house was filled with visits from both Chui's family and mine, and we received a lot of gifts. When my maternity leave ended, I returned to work at the magazine. Fortunately, the publishing house had a daycare service, so I enrolled Abel. We would all go to the same place each day. My mother and Chui's mom frequently visited to spend time with Abel. One day, my mother-in-law gave him a yellow teddy bear that she had bought on her trip to Mexicali. Abel, who was about a year old, immediately bonded with the bear, calling it Mon. From that moment on, he would sleep holding the teddy bear tightly. He always asked for it when he woke up, even before speaking full sentences. At first, I didn't think much of it, dismissing it as a normal attachment to a toy. However, over time, Abel's attachment to Mon became excessive. He refused to sleep without it, and if he couldn't find it, he would cry. My mother reassured me that it was a phase and that he would outgrow it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something off about the situation. When Abel turned 2, we moved him into his own room. The first night was difficult, as he was used to sleeping with Chui and me. He cried, but I resisted the urge to bring him back to our bed, and he eventually stopped crying and learned to sleep alone. One night, though, I woke up to the sound of him crying again. When I entered his room, I found him on the floor. I couldn't figure out how he fell because the crib had high bars. Thankfully, he was unharmed. But I became more vigilant and bought sound monitors to keep an ear on him. One night, while reading a mystery novel, I heard Abel laughing on the monitor. Confused, I went to check on him. When I entered his room, he was sitting in his crib, giggling at the wall. I looked around but saw nothing unusual. His laughter seemed to be directed at something invisible, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I tried to comfort him, but he continued to laugh, gazing at the same spot on the wall. It was unsettling. The next day, I spoke to the daycare director when I picked up Abel. She asked a series of routine questions about Abel's development, such as his diet and sleep schedule. But then she casually asked, "Who is Mon?" Apparently, Abel spent a lot of time laughing and talking to his imaginary friend. The director reassured me that it was normal, but I couldn't ignore the strange feeling that something more was happening. I began to pay more attention to Abel's behavior. One day, I found him sitting in his playpen, and before I knew it, he had wandered into the kitchen. The problem was that the playpen's bars were too high for him to climb out of on his own. Chui dismissed it, saying that children sometimes have an active imagination. He assured me that it was just a phase. But the strange events kept happening. One night, I woke up to the sound of a strange melody playing through the monitor. I thought it was just a glitch, but then I heard a man's voice singing softly from Abel's room. I immediately went to check, but Abel was asleep, and the room was silent. I couldn't explain the eerie feeling that lingered. One of my coworkers, Mary, suggested that I install a camera in Abel's room. I followed her advice and set up the camera. The next day, I reviewed the footage and was shocked to see the head of Abel's teddy bear, Mon, turning toward the window. I showed the video to Chui, but he dismissed it, telling me I was overreacting. It was Mary who then suggested that the teddy bear might be possessed, which I initially laughed off. But as time passed, I couldn't shake the unease I felt. Abel still wouldn't sleep without Mon, and I could tell that there was something wrong with the toy. One day, I decided to take the bear away from Abel and replace it with a different toy. He was upset, but I convinced him that Mon had gone to visit its family. I hid the bear in a bag in my closet, but Abel kept asking for it. That night, I heard laughter again coming from his room. When I checked, Abel was sitting in his crib, laughing at the ceiling. He pointed at the wall and said, "Mon is there." I felt a chill run down my spine. That night, I heard strange noises coming from my closet. I thought it was a rat, but when I checked, I found nothing. The next morning, I went to check on Abel, and to my horror, I found that Mon was back in his crib. I had hidden it away, but somehow it had made its way back. Chui, who had been dismissing the situation, finally started taking it seriously. He admitted that he had seen the teddy bear in unusual places around the house, sitting on the couch and the dining chair, as if it had a life of its own. We both realized that something dark was connected to the bear. I reached out to Mary again, who insisted that we get rid of the bear by performing a ritual. She warned that if we simply threw it away, the curse would pass to someone else. We had to close the circle. Things escalated when I came home one day to find the house in chaos. Chui had been looking for the bear but couldn't find it. Then, we heard dishes and pictures falling from the walls, as if the toy was deliberately hiding and resisting being thrown away. At that point, Chui and I agreed that we needed help. Mary suggested I speak to a priest or a witch to rid the house of the demonic presence. But before I could take action, an accident prevented me from going to work. When I got home, I found the house in disarray, and Chui was holding Abel in his arms. He said we needed to leave immediately, as things were getting worse. The teddy bear was gone, but the atmosphere was thick with fear. Chui finally admitted that he had seen the bear move on its own. It had appeared on the couch and at the dining table as if it were alive. It was clear that the demon attached to it wasn't going to let go easily. In the end, we sought the help of a priest who performed an exorcism on the house and the teddy bear. Afterward, things seemed to calm down, but I never felt entirely safe. I couldn't shake the memory of the demon Payman lurking in the shadows, waiting to claim what was his. I couldn't explain everything that happened, but I knew one thing for sure. There are forces in this world that we will never truly understand, and sometimes they come in the most innocent forms, like a teddy bear. Story 3. The Island of the Dolls. I wasn't born in Mexico City, but I had always wanted to visit. My plan was simple: ride the trajineras and take in the sight of the chinampas, those strange floating gardens that seemed to defy nature. For those who don't know, chinampas are artificial islands built atop the water, used for growing crops, a farming method passed down by the indigenous people for generations. When I finally made it to Xochimilco, I was nothing more than a tourist, eager and unsuspecting. I had seen pictures, heard the stories, but nothing could prepare me for what I was about to experience. Along with 2 co-workers, I planned the trip for a weekend, hoping to explore the city's dark legends. One place in particular stood out: the Island of the Dolls. The moment we neared it, an unsettling energy settled in my chest. It was a long chinampa, its trees and structures draped in decayed, grotesque dolls. We disembarked, stepping onto the damp, uneven ground, our eyes scanning the countless lifeless faces staring back at us. They weren't just dolls, they were something more, something wrong. Some were missing limbs, others had their eyes gouged out. Some were covered in filth, their clothes tattered and stained. And then there was the one with the horns, painted deep red, as if drenched in dried blood. I should have left then, but curiosity is a dangerous thing. The guide, a man whose face bore the weight of unspoken horrors, began telling us the legend of the island. Julian, the man who had once lived there, had found a little girl's lifeless body floating in the murky waters. Try as he might, he couldn't save her. The guilt ate away at him, and soon he began to sense her presence. A whisper in the wind, a shadow in the trees. Desperate to appease her restless spirit, he began collecting discarded dolls, placing them across the island. What started as a desperate plea for peace became an obsession, an infestation. Some say it wasn't the girl's spirit haunting him, but something else, something older, something hungry. As we wandered deeper, we found her, Agustina. She wasn't like the others. She sat upon a tiny trajinera, her crimson dress pristine despite the filth around her. People had left offerings at her feet, bracelets, trinkets, flowers. She wasn't just a doll, she was an entity, a thing of power. Some claimed she could grant wishes for a price. My friend Martha was drawn to her, almost in a trance. She took a photo, her hands trembling, her breath quickened. She had brought something, a small gift, carefully chosen before we even arrived. Without hesitation, she placed it before Agustina, whispered something I couldn't hear, and stepped back, eyes shining with a strange excitement. The rest of the visit passed in a blur. I remember feeling uneasy, like the dolls were watching, whispering. But Martha, she was different. She was elated, almost euphoric. When I asked her if she was okay, she simply smiled, her eyes too wide. "It's a perfect day," she said. I should have pressed harder. We left Xochimilco, returned to our lives, but something came back with us. Days later, Martha was promoted, an impossible jump to regional manager. Just like that, she was gone, moving to Toluca, leaving us behind. At first, we kept in touch, then the calls became infrequent. Then they stopped. Until one night. My phone rang, jarring me from sleep. Martha. Her voice, hollow, distant. "Are you awake?" she asked. I said yes, even though she had woken me. She spoke slowly, like she was searching for the right words. She told me about her perfect life, her husband's success, her children's school, their new house. But something felt off, like she was reciting a script. Before I could ask anything, she hung up. It didn't stop. The calls came at odd hours, late at night, always the same, silence, then the strange rehearsed conversation, and then, the night everything changed. She called, her voice barely a whisper. "Something's wrong. I'm scared." Then, nothing. Alicia and I knew we had to go to her. We took the bus to Toluca, but the journey was uneasy. A strange accident, a creature large and unrecognizable, struck down in the middle of the road. Thick black fur, claws too long, fangs too sharp. The delay stretched on, and we didn't arrive until well past 2 a.m. Exhausted, we checked into a hotel, planning to see Martha in the morning. Then my phone rang. Martha's voice trembled. "Please, I need help, but they can't help me." "Who?" I asked. "Them, the ones who watch." The call cut off. We rushed to her house. It was nestled in a gated community, but the gate was already open, as if expecting us. The house was dark. Too dark. Martha answered before we could knock, her finger to her lips, urging silence. The woman before us was not the Martha we had known. Gaunt, hollow-eyed, her skin stretched thin over sharp bones. She had withered into something else, something drained. She barely spoke, but we didn't need words. Something was very, very wrong. Then she broke. She sobbed, body shaking, and told us the truth. Her husband was gone, having left her for someone younger. But that wasn't what haunted her. Her children, her beautiful, innocent children, were upstairs, and they were terrified. I went to them. The stench hit me first. Rancid, putrid, like rotting flesh. The children sat huddled on the bed, their faces pale, their eyes darting to the corner of the room. "She's there," Abraham whispered, his small hand clutching my sleeve. "She wants to play." I turned. Nothing. Martha's scream echoed from below. I grabbed the children and ran, Alicia right behind me. Martha clawed at her own ears, screaming, "She won't stop! She won't stop!" Then I saw it, a pair of glowing eyes, gleaming from the darkness of the kitchen, low to the ground, but not an animal, not a person, and it was smiling. We ran. Martha didn't follow.